Welcome to the first episode of Dave Examines Movies and TV. Today, I examine Revolutionary Road, the ultimate reunion between one of the most memorable on-screen couples to date, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. The real question surrounding this film is Rose still holding on, or is she now ready to let go? Hey, I'm Dave, and I created DaveExaminesMovies.com. I've been reviewing movies for over 10 years, and I believe I've discovered the ultimate method for reviewing film. I've always used a 1 out of 100 star rating, but somehow that was just still too biased and inaccurate for my taste. I wanted something so unquestionable that even if you hated something that I loved, you could appreciate my logic, and I found it. I call it interpreting the stars, which splits the movie into 10 categories, 5 solid categories that fit any film and 5 specialty categories created specifically for the movie at hand. The first 5 categories are people, writing, behind the scenes, narrative arc, and overall entertainment. Each of these categories will have 5 subcategories of their own that ultimately define the star rating of the film. You'll no longer have to ask why a film's rated 76% versus, say, 77. You will now know what each and every star represents. This is Dave Examines Movies and TV. Okie dokie! Welcome to Dave Examines Movies and TV. If you are not aware at this point, this is live. So that's probably why you're going to hear a lot of me saying and this and that, maybe some pauses in between. You'll probably also hear a child in the background who's supposed to be taking a nap. But those who are listening, thanks for joining me. So I wanted to talk about Revolutionary Road. Funny story here. I've only ever heard of the title, Revolutionary Road. I never knew who was in it, what it was about, anything like that. And when you have a movie like that in mind, you don't really feel like watching it because nothing's really pulling you into it. Well, my wife recently brought it up. She said, you gotta watch this movie because it's the movie that really begs the question, what really happened to, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet after they, started Titanic and then disappeared for however many years. It's actually about 11 years since Titanic now, since Revolutionary Road was released. So that is an interesting question. It's important to note that's the main reason why I watched this. It might even be the main reason why some other people watched it, was because of Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. But regardless, here we go. IMDb states this movie is about, and I quote, a young couple living in a Connecticut suburb during the mid-1950s struggled to come to terms with their personal problems while trying to raise their 2 children. Sounds like an exciting movie, doesn't it? Doesn't even sound like a drama, really. It just sounds like a couple of people living in their home, just living life. And those are kind of the movies that I usually stay away from. If I were to explain what the movie was about, it's about a couple of people who are unhappy with their lives, and they want to do something about that. And the main thing that they want to do is to pretty much get out of the muck of living a typical life, a mundane life that everybody around them is also living. The same jobs, the same things they're wearing, the same non-important issues that everyone's bringing up because that's what people bring up in this day and age. They want to live life. They want to live. And that's really what the movie is about. Another reason why I watched this movie is probably because of Leonardo DiCaprio. If you go through my past reviews of movies that I've watched with Leonardo DiCaprio, they are in the 80 to 100% rating section. And I think that has less to do with him as an actor and more to do with him as a actor looking at scripts and deciding which projects to choose. So that's another reason why I watched this. I hoped that even though the plot kind of sounded boring, I thought maybe just him being there would bring out some really interesting things. Okay, so the first thing that you should know about my weird review method is that, like I said, 10 categories, 5 of them have subcategories. Now, I don't rate the categories, I only rate the subcategories, and those all add up to basically score the main category for me. So the first category, of course, was people. Now, the people category has 5 subcategories, obviously. Those are acting, characters, casting, importance, and chemistry. I'll get into each of those a little bit here. But every movie has these things, so it's important to note how good they are. So the first one's acting. So as far as that's concerned, you have Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet right there in the front. They are obviously good actors. They have worked well together. They have also worked well apart in pretty much everything they've ever done. They know how to act, and they know how to lead the movie as far as acting. There's a lot of balance there. There's a lot of kind of crazy emotions going on as well. And you'll also know somewhere in there is what's his face. He's not even on the main screen on IMDb. I can't think of his name right now. He's the crazy neighbor's son who just got out of the insane asylum. That would be... Wow, he's barely on there. Hang with me here. Live problems. Michael Shannon. I couldn't remember his name. I don't know why, but I just couldn't. Michael Shannon's in there as the crazy neighbor's son, and his character is actually really cool because it's like the smartest and most sane person in there, even though he left the insane asylum. He just speaks his mind, which shame on you. You shouldn't do. Anyways, the acting's really good, so I'm going to have to give that 2 out of 2 stars. So the subcategories have a possibility of 2 stars, and 2 stars only for each one. And the reason for that is you can't have a movie rating over 100%, in my opinion. So you have the option of saying 0, which is specifically noticeably bad. You have 1 star, which is for the most part business as usual. Nothing is different here. I barely noticed anything. And of course, the number 2 rating is when things are specifically noticeably good, so the opposite of 0. Very basic in terms of understanding the subgenres there. Okay. After acting, you have characters. Now, here's the thing about this. I haven't seen a lot of movies where I didn't like the character that Leonardo DiCaprio played. But that's the thing about these characters. The whole idea about this movie is that they blend into everybody else. They don't like blending into everybody else, but regardless, they blend into everybody else, which means they're just mundane characters themselves. There's nothing really interesting about them. They're dramatic, yeah, but so can everybody else be. I'm not going to remember this movie for the characters at all. I'm going to remember it for maybe the story, but the characters themselves are mundane, are a little bit forgettable, but they're not bad, so we're going to go with 1 star. Next up on the subcategories here is casting. Now, I had a problem with this, because this was a difficult one. You have a story about people who could literally be played by anybody because it's a mundane thing. Anybody could play them because they just blend into everybody else, but at the same time, anybody else could play them, but could they play them that well? You know, back to the acting category. Can they act as well? Can they give off the impression about these families being in turmoil the same way that Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet did? Well, I'm not sure if I can answer that truthfully, if I would really know that or not. So I'd have to say 2 for casting. I mean, it's a little bit of a leap there. I don't know if it's completely accurate, but I'm comfortable saying it. The next one's importance. When I say importance, I mean as far as the entire cast of characters is, considered. Do they all have a reason to be in this movie? Or are they just flat and they don't do anything in the movie but just add humor or whatever? Do they all have a reason to be there? The reason I would actually say yes, and actually to a surprising degree, because some of his co-workers have influence on him and his decisions. Their neighbors are the same way, but all for different reasons, right? And then you kind of delve down into DiCaprio's and Winslet's personal reasons for being there as well, which kind of conflict with each other, which of course you have a marriage that is on the rocks like all the time. I would say actually everybody does have importance here. They all influence each other. So I'd have to say 2 stars for that as well. The last subcategory for the people category is chemistry. I don't just mean Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean everybody. Does everybody work well with each other? Do they work well with the main cast? Do they work well with some of the extras if they have to run into some extras, for say? Does everybody feel like they belong there and they're acting like this is great? I'd have to say yes to this as well. I didn't see a single person in this movie that didn't really get along with anybody else. For that, I'm going to have to say, 2 stars. That means that the people category as a whole got 9 out of 10 stars. Which, again, for the subtotal of the entire thing is 9 out of 10, because that's all we've seen so far. The next category up was writing. As for writing, the subcategories here are dialogue. Is the movie balanced? How's the story? How about the originality? And is it interesting in general? So the first one is dialogue. Now, this movie is really, I would say, realistic in terms of a family in turmoil. And a lot of harsh things are said in that. And to me, there's a lot of memorable lines. I want to say so memorable as I will be quoting the movie a year from now. But there were some things that stuck with me after I saw it. So I would have to say dialogue has 2 stars for that. The next one's balance. Is this movie a balanced, or is it over-convoluted? Is there a lot of too many characters, too many places? Is it easy to understand, basically? Yeah, like I said, the plot itself is just following these 2 people around in their lives for the most part. That's not really hard to follow. It's not too hard to understand that, yes, it is balanced. I'd give this 2 stars as well, but that's just totally what I expected from the beginning. So, next up is the story. How was the story? Well, I didn't really care for the story. I mean, I get it. You got these 2 people who hate being in a mundane existence that want something more. So they decide to maybe go towards a goal of Paris. But it's really a typical story just following other people. It's almost like a coming of age in a way, but it's not. So I can't really say I was a huge fan of it. It's fine. It's not really my thing. I'll give this 1 star out of 2 for story. Originality. Have we seen this before? Well, when haven't we, really? This is a story, once again, about a couple, just dealing with lives. So, in essence, we see it all the time. we see people having trouble relationship, not understanding each other, not being on the same page, so getting into fight over stupid things sometimes. I can't really say it's super original because I have seen things like this all the time. I haven't seen this movie before, but nothing really felt new to me. So for originality, again, I'm going to have to say 1 star, not necessarily 0, because there were some things here and there that did feel fresh, but not enough for me to give it 2 stars. Next one's, is it interesting? So is there anything about this movie, either before seeing it, or afterwards or during, that I felt it was interesting? For me, I would probably say no. Other than the fact that it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, that's all I can really say as far as how interesting it is. Because I was interested in seeing it because of them. But that's really not enough to give it even 1 star, because the rest of the movie I consider boring and even predictable in some senses. I could have gone without seeing it as far as the interesting factor is. So for that, I have to get it 0 stars. So in the end here, the writing category of Revolutionary Road is 6 out of 10 points, which means we're up to our subtotal of 15 out of 20 points. The next main category here is behind the scenes. So when we talk about behind the scenes, we have 5 subcategories that deal with the visuals, the directing aspect behind it, the editing aspects, the advertisement, and the music. As far as visuals, it's not anything with CGI or cool scenery, landscapes, or anything like that. Some of the lighting's a little bit dim sometimes. I think that's part of the idea, because this does take place in the 1950s. So when it comes to visuals, I rather say, well, as far as the 1950s, is it believable, or does it feel more like a production of somebody pretending it's the 1950s? For me, I felt like it was the 1950s, and they did a good job there. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 stars for visuals. The next one's directing. I would say, when I think of directing, I think of there's a script at hand, and then the director has to tell a story with it, so he has to decide on what direction, so to speak, where to go. And so I was thinking about it, and I think for the most part, the director did a good job. He made it pretty powerful in some scenes. Of course, he had the help of, the actors being emotional or whatnot. But I think for the most part, the director did what he was supposed to do, so I'm going to give it 2 stars for him. Editing's actually the same way. I don't always give them the highest scores for much because it's hard to tell, but I think a lot of the edited sequences, specifically in this movie, you're dealing with some interesting flashbacks, which deal with the what was it, the mirroring effect, or actually the opposite of that, because you keep on going back and forth. In the past, not too terribly long ago, you have these 2 couples who just started dating, who just got married, and they're like super happy, they have a lot of ambition, and they just love each other to death. And then it keeps going back and forth to the present time, or otherwise known as the 1950s, where they're just all miserable, and that misery has to come down to just a mundane existence where everybody is the same. So that, I have to give it 2 stars, because I think it did a good job at switching back and forth in that terms. Advertisement, this one's usually pretty easy. I'm not talking about product placement or anything like that. I'm actually talking about, trailers, billboards. You go to the movie theater and they have things on the cups and stuff like that. I'm just, as far as that's concerned, I'm looking for either Was it false advertising? Did it say it was going to be something that it's not? Did the advertisements do an okay job, but not really get you interested? Or 2, the advertisement did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was as advertised. Nothing felt false. And yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't see a whole lot of trailers for this, but I was told about it and everything. So that's kind of like my advertisement, was word by mouth. And I would have to say that I'd probably say 2 for this because it was as advertised. Nothing surprised me in a bad way, so I'd give this 2 stars. As far as the music is concerned, I almost always give this subcategory 1 star out of 2, and that's because music in movies is simply not as good as it used to be. It's simply not. The scoring is sometimes great, but for the most part is just typical. These are songs that composers do for a film that make it feel like it's supposed to feel, but you don't see yourself wanting to, buy a soundtrack or buy a score. And I know in the past I've wanted to buy scores, listen to scores, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Superman, the classics as far as awesome movie scores go. Recently, I liked Pacific Rim, for example. I liked Pirates of the Caribbean. They had a good score. And the Dark Knight series by Christopher Nolan. Even Inception had a good one, too. But they are far and few between as far as scores that you want to just listen to again because it was so mesmerizing, so epic, so beautiful, so whatever. And once again, the same thing goes here. They used a composition that sounded fine, but it didn't make me want to buy any soundtrack. I was glad when it was over, and I completely forgot what kind of music it was even playing. So for this one, I have to give it 1 out of 2 stars music, which gives the BTS score, the behind the scenes, 9 out of 10 again. So we were at 15, so that comes down to 24 out of 30. So that's our subtotal so far. Our next main category is narrative arc. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would I add narrative arc to a review method? And there's an actual reason for that. When I used to review movies, when I first started to anyways, 10 years ago, I was a terrible, terrible critic because I often did this thing where I just said, oh, this movie's good, you should go check it out. But when people would ask me, why is it good? I couldn't really tell them. Or the same thing, vice versa. It's bad. Don't check it out. Why is it bad? And I don't know. It's bad. Something felt off. A lot of people actually feel that with movies. They just feel like something is just off. And they don't know what it is. They just feel like it could have been better at some point or another. And I think a big part of that actually does have to do with the narrative arc. And those subcategories are introduction, of course, inciting incident / crossing the threshold, obstacles, climax / epiphany moment, and the following action. You've heard those before a million times, but why is that important? Because, well, if all of these are in place, I feel like you wouldn't feel as if something was missing. But say, for instance, if the introduction was really short because it's an action film and they just want to get into the action, the thing you might feel is missing is, say, an introduction. Also, a lot of epic movies like to have this big, explosive climax / ending, and then boom, it goes in the credits, just making you, whoo! But then you remember that there's something off about it, and that would be the following action, which it just didn't give you at all. So I feel like sometimes this is the case, that if something feels off, it might be in this area. So the first one is introduction. And for Revolutionary Road, that was a pretty typical introduction. You're introduced to our main characters in these flashbacks that I was talking about before, but you're also introduced to the world of the 1950s and how every single person looks exactly the same, and they want to be that match in the matchbook that has a different colored face, you know? They want to be something, they want to live, and that's really what gets into the story of the movie, because the introduction was 2 points for that, because it was there, and it was clear and evident, and it didn't rush it or anything. The inciting incident is pretty simple and clever and whatever. The inciting incident is when the Kate Winslet character tells her husband that she believes that they should realistically plan to go to Paris, which is something he's always ever wanted to do. And he's a little hesitant at first, but he's like, okay, yeah, let's do it then. That would be the crossing of the threshold moment when you can't turn back and you're just full on course now. That is the inciting incident and crossing the threshold moment. For that, I give it 2 stars again. The obstacles, these are the easiest thing to get 2 points on, because every movie really does have obstacles, otherwise it would be boring. But there's actually some pretty decent obstacles in this, primarily speaking with changes to Leonardo DiCaprio's character's his work and getting offered more money. There's also some changes in Kate Winslet's life as well. The people around them keep telling them not to do it, that it's silly, that it's stupid, that they're out of their minds. Those are all obstacles, and I would say this is all very clear and evident. 2 stars for that. Climax. There's a pretty clear climax and crossing of the threshold, or not crossing of the threshold. First there's epiphany moment, then there's a climax as usual. I won't spoil you though, because this is one thing I think, if anything, this will be spoiling you by far, because it's the ending, you know? Let's just say that it's pretty big, bigger than any of the obstacles before, and it's evident. It's a big changing moment. That's all I can really say about it. So I give that 2 stars. That's pretty clear. Falling action, this will get 1 star, and the reason for that is because it's not much of anything. In fact, if anything, I feel like I might have wasted my time watching it in a way, because when I watch movies, I want things to really, I don't know. I don't want to give anything away, so I won't really delve into that, but I'll just say the falling action's 1 star, and we'll just move on from there. Narrative arc, ultimate score here is 9 out of 10. That brings our subtotal up to, goodness, what was it? Alright. Yeah, 33 out of 40, right? Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so the last of the main categories before we go into the specialty ones are the overall entertainment scores. Now, the reason why I added this into my method is because all critics pretty much do what I just did for those first 4, but they always forget, or they don't care, rather, about the entertainment score. They don't care if you're bored through a movie as long as it meets a lot of technical requirements. And that's why a lot of the times when you're watching the Oscars, a lot of the ones that are nominated are really boring. It's because they don't care about that. They just care about if you did something right there. But I believe that it needs to be the whole package, and that includes the entertainment. So in the entertainment category, it has 5 subcategories. Once again, you have rewatchability, you have fun, you have the impulse to buy it, you have the impulse to talk about it, and in general, it sucks the audience in. Okay, so first off, we have rewatchability. Like I said before, I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. It was okay. I don't really plan to rewatch this. Like, not even by mistake. Like, if I was flipping through the channels and I noticed it on whatever TV channel, I would keep flipping because I don't want to see it again. So for that, I'll give it 0 stars out of 2. The next one is it fun. Now, when I say fun, I don't mean it's a fun movie where it's like epic and lots of action or lots of comedy or whatever's happening. It can be fun too for a drama, and when I say that, I mean I'm having fun watching it. You can have fun watching a drama movie. Like, it's just really intense and it's really dramatic, and it's just you are just keyed in on everything that's happening. That to me is considered the fun aspect. But I'm gonna say no, not fun, boring. 0 stars. Impulse to buy it. Either this would mean a cheap version, which would be 1 star. You find one at a garage sale, or you get a cheap digital version only for a few bucks. That would be 1 star. Or I just saw this movie and I need to order it now, would be 2 stars for the impulse buy. Neither of those are true for me. I'm going to have to say 0 stars for the impulse to buy too. So the entertainment score is not looking too hot. The impulse to talk about it. So, once again, if the impulse to talk about it is like, I wouldn't mind having a discussion about this movie with somebody, because I have some thoughts about it, would be 1 star. 2 stars would be, I'm the only one that saw this movie right now, and I cannot hold back from telling somebody else about it. They need to see it right now so I can talk to them about it. You've all had those feelings before. That's important for entertainment. And I have 0 of that too. 0%. Woo! Okay, sucks audiencing is the last subcategory of the entertainment score. And for this, I said 1 star. And the only reason why I said that is because these moments here and there in Revolutionary Road where it's like a lot of emotion and a lot of drama is happening, a lot of craziness. There's some scenes like that in the movie, and they are really powerfully acted and performed, and I think in those moments I'm sucked in and I want to see what's happening. But every single time it kind of, it winds down, and then you're on your own for the remainder. So for that, I'm just going to give it 1 star. It doesn't suck me in for the whole movie. It's just here and there. So yeah, 1 star. But now, you guessed it, we are now on to our specialty categories. What are specialty categories? Well, specialty categories are questions or categories that I wrote before I watched the movie. They're completely based off of expectations, genres, based on the actors. It differs for every single movie. So, for Revolutionary Road, I came up with 5 main special categories. The first one was, this is the Jack and Rose reunion. This is DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. How was that? Did they still work well together? And things like that. And how you score these, because they don't have any subcategories, it's basically the same thing. Instead of rating it 0, 1, or 2 stars, it's rating it 0, 5, or 10 stars. And the first one, again, is Jack and Rose reunion. This is Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. How is it that they're back together now? How was it? I would have to say it was okay. I think as far as chemistry is considered, they pretty much had that in the bag in Titanic, and they just kind of carried that over. I think they had way more chemistry in Titanic, but that being said, if Titanic wasn't in the picture for comparison, I would still say that they did a good job, and they had good chemistry. They had that dramatic, just head-to-head chemistry in this one. But overall, it was cool to see them again for this movie. So I'm going to say 10 stars for the Jack and Rose reunion. The next thing you're going to expect when you're watching trailers or hearing about it is that there's some kind of aspect of romance to it. You got, in pretty much every picture for Revolutionary Road, you got this romantic picture of DiCaprio's and Kate Winslet's head touching each other. Pretty much in every picture. that would obviously say romance. I would say that there's some romance in the flashbacks, some romance in Kate Winslet's character's her ambition in the movie to go to Paris. I believe there's a deep romance undertone to that she's desperate to be how she used to be with her husband. I believe that's romantic, but for the most part, they're butting heads, and they're always mad at each other, and they're always miserable. So it's not a romance at all. It's just, it has romance qualities to it, so you guessed it, 5 stars out of 10 for that. The next one you're going to expect is emotional. If you're watching trailers, you know that there's some emotion to this. It looks like a motion movie just looking at it. And that is very true. Like I've said many times throughout this review, there's some powerful emotional aspects to it. So I would give that one 10 stars as well. The next one I would say, because I heard that this was the 1950s, well, how is this as a 1950s movie? I'm not a huge fan of era-type movies. I don't really like it when they take place in the past, because it's so long ago. It's hard to connect with these characters. You know what I mean? However, in the 1950s, they made it believable as in the 1950s, like I said before, with the visuals, but also they made these characters, connectable. That's kind of the whole idea, is that they are like everybody else, but they're also their own people. A lot of us in today's world can also relate to that. It's just different people dressing different things, they're working at different places, but the same idea applies today as it did then. It's just more apparent then. So for the era, I'm going to give that 10 out of 10 stars as well. The last subcategory, or rather specialty category, is it halfway decent? I use this one almost all the time with my specialty categories. It's important to me because my old tagline for my website was sticking up for bullied movies. And that's what I would do. I would stick up for bullied movies. A lot of people give movie crap for one thing that they do wrong and say that the rest of the movie is terrible. And I don't do that. I look at a movie, and because I used to make movies with my brothers when I was a kid, I have to give them respect for the amount of work that they clearly did, more than I could ever do. So when I look at halfway decent, I have to ask myself if I personally could have made this movie better, or if they did everything they could for the story that they wanted to tell. And for this, I'd have to say that it was definitely halfway decent. I would give it 10 stars any day of the week. They did what they were supposed to do, which means for the entire specialty category, I gave it 45 out of 50 possible stars, which comes down to our grand total of, you guessed it, 79 out of 100. So, to give you an example of how I do these things, how I do my interpreting of the stars, I just walked you through which every star represents to make that 79 out of 100 score for Revolutionary Road. Now, it's an okay movie, like I said before. It's nothing I would really want to watch again, but a lot of people do like it. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out, even if it's for the once. It's not going to kill you. But yeah, check that out. Anyways, tomorrow I will be coming back with another episode of Dave Examines Movies and TV for TV Tuesdays. It's going to be, a trial and error kind of thing. I didn't plan for this in advance, so tomorrow might be a little silly because I have nothing really planned for it, other than to tell you what episodes of TV I watched in the week of March 19th through 25th, which is actually 19 different TV shows, believe it or not. And I will basically go through those with you and tell you which 3 basically stood out above the rest. So look out for that tomorrow at noon as well. And I guess I'll catch you next time on Dave Examines Movies and TV. Make sure you like this podcast, subscribe to it, give me some comments as well, because I always like to interact with my audience. My email for my website and this podcast, I guess, would be dave@daveexaminesmovies.com. Also, my Twitter is at IamDWG. That is IAMDWG. And put a hashtag in there for podcast, so I know what you're talking about. All right, guys. All right, I'll catch you tomorrow with TV Tuesday. Peace out.